And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Strategy Show. It is Wednesday, October 26th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by PrizePicks. 10-game slate today. Tons to talk about. Really difficult slate, in my opinion. When I ran through this on the process earlier today, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, very, very flat. Not a lot standing out. Anxious to get Adam's thoughts there. Before we get started, though, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, I don't even want to be like, hey, how'd you do last night? I know how you did. We've talked about it. You and I are both equally irritated. You have anything else you want to add about yesterday?
No, Norm Powell sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty happy with the slate overall. Just can't do a lot when you get like a 5 to 10th percentile outcome from your second highest owned guy.
Yeah, it's not ideal, not fun. It's just annoying across the board. Today's another day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the moral of the story.
Yeah, it felt really good. You're going from like, man, like that really sucked having to play so much Norm Powell and him not coming through. And then I crunch lineups today, and the first thing I see is Dennis Smith Jr. and Josh Richardson everywhere. And it's just like, oh, great.
Yeah. We took a time machine back to 2018 to play today.
Yeah.
Well, look, we got 10 games to talk about. That's a lot. We're going to be here for an hour and 15 minutes. As much as I want to just chop it up about yesterday. Kudos to Steve Buzzard. You guys know him as DeColts. Took down 200K on DraftKings yesterday. That's not just one contest. That's two separate contests for 100K and two different lineups that did it. Really crazy night for Steve.
Pretty sure awesome. That's like a $500,000 week.
Yeah, he has been having a relatively good run of it over the past few days.
Yeah,
I know bad. I saw Eddie Lai up there quite a bit. I know Tom was up there today. Alex got second yesterday. Lots of big things happening at Stokastic for everyone that isn't hosting and analyzing this particular show. You want to just dive in?
Yeah.
All right. We're going to kick it off. First game of the night, Orlando Magic, 8-point dogs in Cleveland. 218 total. That's the second lowest total on the slate, which is going to make this game pretty difficult to get to. We're still without Jalen Suggs for Orlando. Obviously, still no Fultz, Harris, or Isaac. On the Cleveland side, looks like we're going to have one more day without Darius Garland before he's back. So on the Orlando side, we've got Franz Wagner at 12% owned on DraftKings, 19% on FanDuel. Everybody else is single digits. I don't love this spot. Obviously, Cleveland's defense is good. Low total. I like taking some shots on the lower owned guys. I don't really need at least on FanDuel, chalk Franz Wagner. Still looks good at 6K, don't get me wrong, but 19% is a lot. I just don't see a lot of priorities coming out of Orlando.
Yeah, that's where I'm at as well. 10-game slate, so it's not a situation like yesterday where every decent play is going to be popular or in a lot of my lineups. Franz Wagner leading the way in ownership on DraftKings at 12.5%. I get it. $6,100 small forward certainly has plenty of upside. He's kind of been like right on the brink of those big games this year, but he hasn't quite gotten there yet. I know the other day he had like 31 fantasy points going into the fourth quarter, finished with 31 fantasy points. So you just haven't really seen that big game out of him, but it is there. But doesn't look like a priority at 6,100. Cole Anthony at 6,100, certainly fine if you want to get some of him. He kind of did the same thing as Wagner. I don't even remember if it was the same slate or a different one, but you had Cole Anthony like on fire on DraftKings through three quarters and then finished the game with the same number of points. So, the upside is there. I think he's also pretty much correctly priced. I've been getting to a lot of Wendell Carter Jr. in general just because he's low owned and has a high ceiling. But, again, at 6,900 on a 10-game slate with center-only eligibility, it's not going to be a huge priority for me.
Right now, I'm under on that Franz Wagner number on the FanDuel side, 19%. It's just more than I need on the 10-gamer. Cole Anthony, 7%. Paolo Banchero is 3%. I am getting to those guys in the teens. So I'm basically swapping the Franz Wagner ownership for 2xing Cole Anthony and like 3 or 4xing Paolo Banchero. That works for me. If I'm going to get to a part of Orlando, I'd rather get to a little bit more of the other starters that I do like that aren't getting the ownership. I don't know what to do with Banchero right now. 1.19 fantasy points per minute so far this season. That's exactly where I have him in this game, which may be a little bit aggressive. That said, he is probably the guy that I would like to get to the most at low ownership from the Orlando Magic, but I don't have anything that I really want to say about like real priorities here. It's one of the worst spots on the slate.
Yeah, and as far as Banchero goes, one thing that I do think, and maybe it'll come back to normal, but like he's kind of just gotten more ownership than you can project him for in a lot of games. I think it just comes with being, obviously the first overall pick, but then he had that massive tournament-winning game night one, and it kind of just seems like ever since then it's been like, oh, this guy should be like 3 or 4% owned, but instead he's 8 or 9. I don't know how much longer that'll keep up, but it has been worth noting, I think.
And that's not too surprising to me. Like rookies in their third and fourth game, going to be a little bit tougher to nail down than anybody else. I don't really have anything else that I want to touch on here.
No, I'm with you. I'm actually almost done running a crunch, which is weird for me in the morning, but I will have that shortly.
You'll love to see it. Well, let's get into the other side of this game then. That would be the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs, like I said, still without Darius Garland. We've seen Donovan Mitchell just absolutely monopolize the basketball so far in Cleveland, much to the chagrin, I would imagine, of Karis LeVert. Donovan Mitchell's 9,500 and 9,400 across DK and FanDuel, pulling a little bit of ownership on FanDuel, but nothing too crazy. He's probably like appropriately priced to slightly overpriced. I don't have a ton of interest in Mitchell here.
Yeah,
he's fine.
Yeah, I think he looks fine. I mean, I don't mind the matchup. I do still like that Garland is out. We obviously don't have much of a sample in Cleveland of him playing without Garland, but playing without Conley in Utah, you did see a very sizable increase in production from Donovan Mitchell. The issue is just he's up to $9,500. He's point guard, shooting guard. That's never a position where it's difficult to find good mid-range or pay-up options or value options. So the opportunity cost is pretty high. 6% ownership is appealing just in the sense that, Mitchell certainly could just go throw up 55, 60 DraftKings points and you wouldn't be too surprised about it. And obviously you'd like to have it at 6%, but probably going a little bit under-owned, but also at that price, I think pretty difficult to prioritize.
No one else is getting any ownership on this team outside of Karis LeVert is at 11% on the FanDuel side. Everything else is single digits. I like LeVert here. 6,200 on DraftKings. You get the shooting guard small forward eligibility. He's 5,900 on FanDuel. Same thing. I just sort of think that at some point in time, he's going to want to be Karis LeVert and shoot a little bit more. I just don't know if Donovan Mitchell's stopping that from happening. Hasn't been good. 0.8 fantasy points per minute so far. Do you have any interest in LeVert? I also have no problem getting to Evan Mobley, but he's a little bit easier to talk about.
LeVert looks okay to me at 6,200. Like he should take on a bigger role without Garland. We did see a solid game from him last time out, but he is still, I think, pretty clearly going to be the second guy behind Mitchell. He played in that overtime game against Washington. He played 36 minutes, so basically 31 in regulation, 23.75 DraftKings points. So the game that I was referring to was the one before that against the Bulls, where he had 35 and a half in 33 and a half minutes. So I do think you're getting north of 30 minutes from him, which is nice, but I think he's also pretty much priced correctly.
When you say north of 30, like I got him in for 34. Am I crazy there?
What do you mean?
No, the way that you were saying it, I felt like you were on just like 31 or something.
Well, he played 31 last game. But the game before that he played 33 and a half and lost like 4 minutes to garbage time. I would think 33, 34 is good.
Okay, yeah, I'll probably walk him back a minute too. Evan Mobley, 6,300 power forward center, 6,400 power forward center, depending on the site. I think he's pretty interesting at 4% ownership on DraftKings. If you want to take the shot, he also has not been good so far this year. 0.81 FanDuel points per minute. Do you have any interest in Mobley or Allen or Chetty, since Chetty's been playing, bigger minutes with no Garland around?
I wouldn't say anything that looks like a priority. Mobley's getting 4% at 6,300. I never mind getting to him just because he can contribute in so many ways. Kevin Love at 4,900 seems kind of interesting. 8% projected ownership, 12% chance of being in the optimal lineup. In the game against the Wizards, he only played 14 minutes. In the prior game, he played 23. So another spot where I think the playing time is really volatile, but he does produce when he's on the floor. So I don't mind that. Chetty's price tags come up enough where I don't have a ton of interest there.
All righty. Just, it's not a really good game for, that's lovely. All 3 Excel workbooks that I have open just crashed.
Nice.
Hope I clicked save recently.
That would be good.
Yeah. It's just not an appealing DFS game. I think that's really the only way that I can say it. Yes, I will continue where I left off. Where is that going to be? Excel. That's what I need to know. Looks like I'm pretty close to where I wanted to be. Do I have Cleveland pulled up over here? I do. Let's take 1 minute away from Levert. Looks like everything that I was doing has been saved. So,
well, I'm glad you had that issue because I had an issue in something in my sheet that I was trying to update in order to finish running that crunch. So
okay,
you bought me some time.
Perfect. Well, now that I buy you some time, I couldn't be happier to be able to buy you a little bit of time. Do you want to get into game number 2 now?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do it then. We're going to go to Atlanta. 7.5 point favorites here in Detroit. 229 total. Pretty standard stuff on the Atlanta side. Justin Holiday is questionable. That does not affect anything on a day like today, or at least I don't believe that it does. No one in double digits in ownership on DraftKings. We do get Trae Young to 24% owned on FanDuel. The reason for that is that he's 8,700 and should be 25% owned on FanDuel. DeJounte Murray is 10% owned on FanDuel at 9,500. I mean, the fact that DeJounte Murray is $800 more expensive than Trae Young on FanDuel is kind of wild to me. I love Trae on FanDuel. That's a no-brainer $8,700 price tag. You like, he's just a really good play. There's no other stance to take. Do you like anything from Atlanta, though, on the DK side?
I mean, always happy to get to the guards if I can, but you kind of run into the same issue that you do with Donovan Mitchell, where Trae Young at 9,700 looks fine. So does DeJounte Murray at 9,800, but we're on the second game of the slate, and we've now talked about 3 guards at the same price point that all look really good, and there's no real way to distinguish between them. You know, if you tell me that you're positive Trae Young is going to beat DeJounte Murray and Donovan Mitchell, you're just overconfident in your ability to predict the future. And the same goes if you say Murray or Mitchell. Like they're all just very, very similar plays. And when you see that, that's going to pull down your total exposure to them. And again, there's 8 more games to talk about also. So certainly happy to get to either one. Both look very good. We have Young projected slightly higher at the cheaper price tag, but you have MPE on DraftKings for DeJounte Murray. He's pulling 3% ownership, 8% coming to Young. So happy to get there, but just difficult to like say they stand out above each other or above Mitchell or above other guys on the slate.
All righty. I don't have anybody popping up for me on DK for Atlanta. I got to like 8% Collins, 7% Trae. Very, very minimal exposures. On the FanDuel side, it's basically the same other than that broken Trae Young price. 8,700, just no brainer. Probably a cash option on FanDuel, given that ownership, given that price tag.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Oh, you were just informing. I didn't realize you were asking.
You're good. Red Skittles hit us with the super chat. I also got one from him earlier this morning. Had a big day yesterday on FanDuel. This is for a case of White Claws for Ship. It's the secret sauce that's necessary for a takedown.
Good to know, because I have some in my fridge. I'll have to break those out.
I think you have to go get a new case of White Claws to really get the feel. It can't be your old ones.
But I haven't been drinking them, so it's not like I've been drinking those and losing.
I think that I'm right here.
Okay.
I think you're going to have to go out and buy a case of White Claws.
Right, to be clear, I'm not going out. I'm going to have it delivered from 3 blocks away. But
yes, let's also we can get into that conversation of how you are able to do that, and I didn't know that it existed.
Yeah, yeah. But it does depend. I mean, there might be different ones. I know the delivery service I use, it definitely depends. Like it's a city thing. Like I was able to use it in St. Louis, and then when I moved back home, I couldn't use it. So and in Baltimore, I can.
When it comes to those sorts of things, we'll probably get it in like a year.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it's in St. Louis and Baltimore means that like you shouldn't be that far away. It's not like we're big cities.
No, it'll be soon enough. Why is my draft?
Actually, the first time I ever used it was the first night that I won 100K in DFS too.
When? How long ago?
2016 in St. Louis.
It's been there that long?
Yeah.
Oh, that's did it originate there?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Jesus. That's even weirder to me. Anyway, anything else we want to touch on for Atlanta?
No. John Collins.
On the Pistons side, the highest owned...
We don't need to do that.
Oh, I thought you were just like saying like, yeah, John Collins.
Oh, well, I was just going to elaborate that he looks pretty good at 6,800, but...
Yeah, he's been playing really big minutes for the first time in like his Atlanta tenure, especially when everybody everybody essentially is healthy. Obviously, Bogdanovich not around, but I wish that they could still get him center minutes. Those minutes just don't exist any longer. 6,800 for John Collins on DraftKings, 7,600 on FanDuel. Really talented offensive player, ultra efficient. Happy to get there. Pistons. The highest owned guy in this game is 8% Beef Stew on DraftKings at 5,400. And he does look like a really nice point per dollar play. You get the power forward eligibility, so that makes sense to me. Cunningham, 7,900 unowned. Sadiq Bey, low owned, played like ass yesterday. Cunningham, 7% owned on FanDuel, where he's 7,500. I'm going to get a lot of Cade Cunningham today. Stop me if you've heard this story before.
Yeah. For me, actually, the highest owned Piston I'd be getting to right now would be Bogdanovich, getting like 14%, getting like 8% of Cade, 7% of Stewart, 7% of Bey. For the most part, just guys that don't stand out. I do like, the fact that Bogdanovich is 5,400 and a Ford, so you're not dealing with as much opportunity cost. Same can be said for Bey, who's a little bit more expensive. Stewart with power forward eligibility as well. So, they're kind of just lineup filler to me.
Yeah, for the most part, I'm with you, other than the Cade ownership on FanDuel being a little bit more interesting to me. There's just going to be other guys in that $7,500 range that are pulling ownership where Cade isn't.
Yeah.
He hasn't been as bad as it seems either.
He's getting 2% ownership on DraftKings, so 8% is 4x.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that works. I mean, he's been a fantasy point per minute on FanDuel so far. It hasn't been as bad as it feels. Yeah, I know.
We're kind of back to beginning of rookie season Cade, where it's just like anytime you've rostered him, you've wished you didn't. But also, he's played like shit, and he hasn't been that bad. Like, it's really obvious that the ceiling is there. It's just a matter of getting to it.
Like right now, Cade is 7,500. Anthony Edwards is 7,400. This is FanDuel. Cade's 6.5%. Edwards is 19. Like, I like Edwards a lot today. He is someone I'm getting to. I don't think that those two guys project all that dissimilarly for today, but I get 1 1/3 of the ownership. Like, that's just more interesting to me.
The guy's averaging a fantasy point per minute on 48.1% true shooting.
There you go.
And
there you go.
Like, to reiterate, like, obviously 48.1% true shooting is really bad, but when you're talking about somebody like Cade, I mean, that number is low enough that like it's coming up for anybody. But when you're talking about somebody like Cade, that number is definitely coming up going forward. And when you're getting a fantasy point per minute while he can't buy a basket, you're just going to get the games where he starts to correct. And it's like, oh, Cade can't miss. And Cade just scored 55 DraftKings points.
Yeah. Shooting 44% at the rim so far this season. Like, you just expect that to go up for a guy that it's not like he's some 6'1" weak guard. This is a 6'7" dude. Like, he should be finishing better at the rim and needs to figure that piece out. But I just love getting to someone like him at that range with an ownership number that just doesn't seem applicable.
Yeah, and 28% usage so far, 28% assist percentage. And the other thing, too, is like if you get a game where he's knocking down his shots, there's nothing on that team stopping him from just taking more shots either, and just playing more aggressively. It actually showed up in the Wizards game, I want to say it was. He was just doing nothing the entire game. Wasn't like just watching the game, you didn't even realize he was playing. And then in the fourth quarter, he gets a couple shots to go in, and he just starts being ultra aggressive in the paint, just scored, I think, 10 or 12, points in the first half of the fourth quarter. So that's the thing too, is, he's getting usage anyway, but if that shot starts to fall, there's nothing stopping him in an individual game from going from that 28% usage rate to 33, 34%.
I wish I had more to say about this Pistons team. I really don't. These first two games have been less than interesting for me. I like him. I actually like the Pistons side more on DraftKings, just getting to a little bit of Cunningham, Bey, Boyan, Stewart. But I don't really have anything else here to talk about in Hawks and Pistons.
Yeah, just back to beginning of last year, Cade. He's going to put up some huge games soon.
I know. I love it. I'd like to I hope it's today where the ownership's still down, because if we come back to this on Friday or whatever, when the Pistons play again and Cade's 6,800 on FanDuel and everybody plays it and it's there, it's going to really piss me off.
I feel like that's how NBA DFS has worked for at least the last 2 years. We just saw with Desmond Bane, and I'm not complaining because I was over the field anyway, but I was jamming the guy in at 5% and 6%, and he can't make a shot. Then he's 16% and he knocks down 8 threes. I just feel like that's how NBA DFS has worked for 2 years. It's just the play will be exactly the same for 3 or 4 days in a row, or even better in the previous days. And until the field catches up, shots don't fall.
Yeah. It's really frustrating on a day-to-day basis. I don't like it anymore, man. Schedule for the rest of the day, pretty simple. NFL Strategy Show Ownership Edition comes up after this one at 11 a.m. We'll get the NBA Deeper Dive at 4:45. That will be Adam. I will then be back at 6 p.m. for NBA Live Before Lock. That'll be me and Eric Lindquist. Adam will be on the Deeper Dive with Greg. That's probably it for right now. Just a schedule. We'll talk about prize picks in a bit. We'll talk a little bet MGM in a bit. But let's move on to game number 3. This is the interesting battle. The number 1 defense in basketball, the Milwaukee Bucks, 233 total, 4-point favorites against the dead last defense in basketball by multiple points, the Brooklyn Nets. Woof, so far. Incredible to me that this is a 4-point line. If you want to know where like smart money is in comparison to like what people would set this line if they were just looking at this game would be, this is a pretty good example. We get Kevin Durant, 10K on draft.
How do you mean that?
I think generic people would think this line would be like 8 or 9. Like giant dogs to the Nets. Everybody thinks the Nets are ass. Everybody wants to hate Ben Simmons. But
I am people. I think the Nets are ass, and I think the Bucks absolutely destroy them.
You're crazy. Kevin Durant's 10K on DraftKings, 9,900 on FanDuel. Kyrie is 9,300 on DraftKings, 8,800 on FanDuel. So he's competing with Trae Young's price there. No one more than 7% owned on DraftKings. Highest owned guy on for DraftKings and FanDuel is the man that we call Ben Simmons. 6K on FanDuel, 6,500 on DK. He's 27% owned on FanDuel today. Point guard, power forward eligibility, which might be the first time I've seen that split in eligibility, and they got it right, which is really cool to see.
First time on FanDuel, you mean?
Yeah.
I was like, DraftKings does it a lot, or a decent amount.
I feel like it's always point guard, small forward.
Oh, what did you say?
It's point guard, power forward.
Oh, okay.
Which, like, it doesn't really make much of a difference here, but I don't feel like I ever see that, and that's what I really do think Ben Simmons is playing. So that's what's really interesting to me.
Yeah, I feel like the only if I have seen that before, it had to have been LeBron.
Yeah, and I even would have said that that's small forward, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Guard, small forward.
Do you like anybody on the DraftKings side? Caveat, obviously, like you can always get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving in lineups.
Yeah, obviously you can get to those guys. I right now would not be, just because, again, opportunity costs, they have to deal with each other. The highest owned guy from the Nets that I'm getting to at the moment on DraftKings is Simmons, and that's at 7%. So just even with the field, the assist opportunities are still there. The rebounds will be there. If he scores, he scores. It would be really nice if he stops fouling out of games at some point. Did you see the John Morant play that fouled him out?
I know Ben bitched about it a lot in the post game, but I did not see it.
So it was a really cool play by John Morant, and it was also an absolutely atrocious call by the ref. But yeah, you have to find it on Twitter. But John Morant talked about it after the game and said that his rookie year in like an end of half situation. Mm-hmm. Did you see what I'm talking about?
I know. I heard John Morant's quote about like calling back to a play from 2 years ago.
So he basically did the same thing. He just baited Ben Simmons into like running at him and then drew the foul. Which wasn't a foul, but like it was still cool, the idea and the concept and all of that. But yeah, hopefully he stops fouling out of games. He's still cheap enough where there's clearly upside for him on this particular slate. I don't think he's super necessary. And like I said, getting around the field at 7%.
Yeah, 6K with that eligibility on FanDuel. Like, I'm not surprised to see him be 27% owned. I think he's pretty clearly the best point per dollar play on the Nets on the FanDuel side. That said, that is ownership that I am going to be mildly getting away from. That just feels a little too heavy for this 10 gamer, but I do think he looks like a really good play given that price tag. He's been a 0.8 fantasy point per minute guy. We're used to him being like a 0.1 guy. There's no usage coming into him right now, but assist rate looks really good. Rebounding rate looks really good. There's something there for Ben Simmons. I don't know if the spot against Milwaukee is the spot where that like breaks him out of it, but I don't mind getting to him on FanDuel.
35% assist percentage so far, 12% rebounding percentage, 15% usage rate, only averaging 0.85 DraftKings points per minute, but certainly has that, 10, 10, 12 triple-double in his bag.
Yeah. And that's like, his final line doesn't have to look good on paper to make him a real, like he could go 9, 9, 9, 2, and 2. And all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, like Ben Simmons had a massive day.
Well, like how many $6,500 guys have actual triple-double upside?
Not a lot. I mean, Russell Westbrook.
Yeah, who's not even playing.
No. Josh Giddey, who's probably more expensive than that. I don't know. I like Simmons, but 27% is more than I need. What's up?
MJ Heitling said Ben Simmons 3-point eruption spot.
What, one? That would be the eruption. I don't have much else to. Go ahead.
I can guarantee Milwaukee will give him plenty of room on the wing.
Yeah, and I can guarantee he ain't taking that shot. I'll never understand it. Yeah,
Draymond definitely in that mix.
Yeah, I will never understand it.
What?
Just like the mental block of shooting.
Oh.
It's really weird. You don't
I actually can understand it from baseball issues, but like it sucks.
You don't see this in the NBA. I can't think of any choice. Like I can't think of any other spots where to get to the NBA, you just so naturally, generally speaking, have to be an alpha player.
Well, I think it developed once he was there. Like I think it sent back to the postseason. Like he was never he wasn't a shooter anyway. But like him being legitimately scared to shoot, I think developed in that postseason run.
It's just like he must have grew up as such a different person. Because I know that me and every other person I ever played a basketball game with wanted to shoot threes.
Yeah.
Like that was the coolest shit in the world at a time where that wasn't happening.
Right. Yeah. And like had the confidence to do it, even though they were not going in.
Yeah. Like I was the center on all of the teams until I stopped playing. And the only thing that I wanted to do was get the hell away from the blocks and just let it sail. No one was looking for that. For him to just like not have that. I mean, I guess if you're that much bigger than everybody and faster than everybody, you don't care as much because you just get to the rim whenever you want. But it's so weird. So weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I, at this point, kind of just like compare him to Chuck Knobloch, except for he was never good at shooting. Knobloch was at one point able to throw a ball to first base.
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't know where this leads.
Especially because he won't play center.
Right. And like people really don't understand how big he is. Right. Like he's a 7-foot player. He's massive. His wingspan is insane. He weighs so much more than he weighs just as much as 2/3 of the centers that exist. It's
Steve
real.
Leibowitz said there's balance in life. Ben Simmons is balanced by Dylan Brooks.
So true. I mean, those two need to combine their DNA somehow. If this was like a job interview, college type question, you're like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't have any idea where I see Ben out of the league, an all NBA player. Like it's all on the table.
Yeah, it's entirely there.
If he gets one good mental coach and all of a sudden things snap back into place, like who the hell knows?
Well, yeah, it's like a lot of it comes back to him too. Like I don't even know how much the dude likes playing basketball.
Yeah. I mean, he was willing to probably give up a shit ton of money to not do it last year. So probably not a lot, which we had that conversation sort of yesterday. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you might never do content again, and all you're looking for is like $1 million.
Right.
And content's you don't gotta work that hard to do this shit if you don't want to. Milwaukee Bucks on the opposite side of this one get such a tasty matchup against just an absolutely abysmal defense so far. I think they're 4 points ahead or behind the 29th ranked team in defensive rating. That's how bad it's been so far. Giannis is 11-2 on DraftKings, 11-6 on FanDuel. Probably the highest projected guy today, a Scotia ahead of Nikola Jokic. 20% owned on DK, 25% owned on FanDuel. I mean, if you don't like Giannis today, you got to get your head examined.
Second highest owned guy for me right now on DraftKings. You said it at the top, pretty balanced slate in terms of exposures, but getting to 33% Giannis looks great. Very happy with that. Like you were saying, Brooklyn absolutely dreadful defensively. Just should be a spot where Giannis goes absolutely nuts. 20% projected ownership just because it's a 10-game slate and there are other pay-up options to get to. So I'm perfectly happy getting over the field there. He looks great to me. Power forward and center eligibility pretty nice as well.
Marv Perry says you were the center, LOL. I don't think you're like 6'2" and was 6'2" in 8th grade.
Yeah,
it's just I was really tall at that point. And not in a league where competition was ultra heavy. It was, standard issue, generic high school basketball and middle school basketball. Do you like? Are you getting more Giannis than Jokic? Because those are really
Oh
like the
yeah.
only two guys that
Oh
we
yeah.
can compare in that area.
I mean, right now I have 1% Jokic and 33% Giannis.
Oh, okay. I'm getting to a lot more Jokic because of the ownership. We've got. Uh, I'm guessing you've got a bigger gap between Giannis and Jokic than I do in projected points.
6, 5.5.
Three 3/10.
Okay, yeah. No, so I actually have Giannis and Jokic being overowned by like the same amount, same proportion. So Jokic just isn't even really getting pushed up for me, even with the
You have
ownership.
Jokic overowned
Yeah, I have
at
Jokic optimal
8%.
6. I have Jokic optimal 6% of the time at 8% ownership.
Interesting. Okay, I'm getting to a lot more Jokic. I'm sure that does not surprise you. If you have two guys projected for the same fantasy points and one is the third of the ownership, you're probably getting a bit more of the lower ownership guy. We'll talk about Jokic in a bit then. I'm surprised to see you so low.
I think it's just the position.
Yeah, maybe. And
Plus, like his rates do
by the
come
way,
down.
I am talking about DraftKings. By the way, I'm getting them on FanDuel too, but I am trying to reference DraftKings in this example.
Yeah, and I mean his rates come down with Murray too, which like he's still really good. He's better than everybody except for Giannis on a point per minute basis. But yeah, just have a big enough gap between him and Giannis, and then also the position where I can roster Giannis in 3 spots, I can roster Jokic in 2, and it's probably the most valuable spot also.
Fair. Drew Holiday. Well, nobody else on the Milwaukee side looks all that interesting on DK. FanDuel's a little different. Drew Holiday is 7,800, so another guard that's just wildly underpriced for the spot. He's pulling 23% ownership there. Another guy where like obviously Drew Holiday is a really good play on paper, but he's 23% owned. This is another example with Cade where I don't have the gap between Drew Holiday and Cade to be that huge from a fantasy point perspective, but one's 6% owned, the other one's 23. I like Drew Holiday. He's a really good play. There's just so many dudes in this area that aren't getting ownership that when you start to become one of the chalkier plays, it's weird to me. I don't know how to balance
and that's that. And ideally, I think that's how you want it to work. Like you're just going to take some of that, like some of the ownership from the highest owned guy, move it to other guys that look similar. That's pretty much how it's going to work. And that's why typically, if you look at the overall exposures of good players, you're going to see their highest ownership going typically to value guys or to pay up guys because there's a lack of comparable options. There's only so many sub 4K guys that you can project to play 30 minutes, and it's usually because of injury on that team. There's only so many 11K guys that are going to project for 60 fantasy points on a slate. When you talk about guys in like the 8 to 9K range, typically you're going to get pretty spread out exposure because there's just a lot of comparable pieces.
What do you want to do with the rest of this team? Bobby Portis not getting any ownership on DraftKings. He's 5,600. He's 4,900 on FanDuel. He's 15% owned. I like that point per dollar stuff, but 22 minutes and 22 minutes basically in the first 2 games. I don't know how much to read into that with no Middleton. Like it's not as if they've got a lot of other options. I think the fact of the matter is like Brook Lopez has just been pretty good and they haven't needed Portis. And this doesn't strike me as a Portis game when Brooklyn's offense is defense is so bad.
Yeah, and also Portis in the games last year that Middleton was out, when he came off the bench, he averaged like 22 minutes. So it's not like it's completely surprising either. That was a spot game 1 where he ended up being really popular because people had expected him to start. He didn't start. People didn't adjust, and they got there anyway. But he definitely, you should expect him to lose minutes when he comes off the bench based on what we've seen in the past. So I'm not really getting too much of him. I'm not getting too much Drew on DraftKings. If I did, like, cool. He's good. It's a good matchup, but his price is also up to 8,500. It just becomes kind of difficult to want to get a lot of that. So yeah, I mean, Giannis, I'm getting a ton of on DraftKings. Other than that, not getting much of anything. Getting a little bit of Brook Lopez, getting a little bit of Javon Carter, but nothing really that matters outside of Giannis.
To the Charlotte Hornets we go. 8-point dogs in this one at the New York Knicks. 226 total. That's how you know how fast and how bad like Charlotte generally is, that the Knicks can get to a 226 total because they are normally at the bottom of this one. Charlotte's walking wounded here. LaMelo Ball out. Terry Rozier doubtful. Cody Martin doubtful. Obviously Miles Bridges not around these parts any longer. So today is the Dennis Smith Jr. show. 6K though on DraftKings, 6,500 on FanDuel. He's 20 to 25% owned. I'm surprised the price has already gotten to where it needs to be.
Yeah, good job DraftKings on that.
Yeah, I don't like. obviously stepping into a bigger role. Solid point per minute guy, has been better this season than you would expect. Don't know if I want to chase down properly priced Dennis Smith Jr.
I'm not getting as much as the field right now, and I'm pretty happy with that. Comfortable wouldn't be the right word, because certainly the upside and ability is there for him to just go nuts. Like, this is a guy that is just built to play basketball on a shitty team where he can go do whatever he wants. He's going to get, or he's good at getting fantasy points. He's not great as an NBA player, but plenty of opportunities there for him. It's just that at 6K, there's plenty of other guys that you can get to as well, including guys on his team. Like, we have Dennis Smith Jr. projected for 21% ownership. Hayward's $500 more, getting 13.5%. Oubre's $200 more, getting 9%. I think those guys all have similar range of outcomes. Like, if ownership were the same across the board, sure, I would go to Dennis Smith Jr. first, but I don't think that they're that different. And so for me, I'm getting like 16% Hayward, like 11% Oubre, like 12% Dennis Smith Jr., getting to all of those guys a bit, but not really going crazy on any of them relative to the others. I'm
getting a lot more Oubre from the FanDuel side of this one. I have him in DSJ projected basically the same, but Dennis Smith Jr. is just a point guard eligible. Oubre's shooting guard, small forward. One of them's 9% owned, the other's 25. Like, these decisions are being made for me pretty easily just by the public. These guys are projected similarly. I'm taking the ownership discount for, the slightly more efficient guy that's probably going to shoot more in Kelly Oubre. So I think Oubre is the best guy on the team for today relative to ownership. Still understand why people go to DSJ. Still looks good. Still getting to 10% of him. Gordon Hayward as well. After that, I'm probably not touching anything from Charlotte.
And so a limited sample going back to last year without Bridges, Ball, or Rozier on the floor. And obviously Dennis Smith Jr. didn't exist, and he's higher usage than Ish Smith, for example. But 25.2% usage rate in 240 minutes for Kelly Oubre, averaging a fantasy point per minute. Gordon Hayward, 23.1% usage rate in 192 minutes, averaging 0.94 DraftKings points per minute. I expect Dennis Smith Jr. to be around the fantasy point per minute as well. So you're just talking about similar production. To put it in context, I have right now Hayward projected for like 34 DraftKings points, Oubre at like 32, Smith at like 32. So you're just talking very similar plays. I think I am pretty happy getting 10 to 15% of all of them, as opposed to jamming in a more popular Dennis Smith Jr. at the expense of the other guys.
We'll get to it in a bit, but Jayshawn Tate is not going to kill the Jabari Smith show. That I'm pretty confident in.
Yeah, it doesn't seem likely.
No.
It should prevent me from playing a bunch of KJ Martin, which is good.
I don't know if it's going to prevent you from doing that today either, but we'll get there.
It is right now.
No Bruno, no Alperen Şengün. They're pretty thin. Anyway, we'll go to the Knicks side. The Knicks get the benefit here of the pace up spot against Charlotte. 226 total. You don't see totals this high for Knicks games all that frequently. On DraftKings, nobody's in double digits, which actually makes Brunson and Randall and Barrett and Fournier and Robinson all pretty interesting to me. On the FanDuel side, RJ Barrett is $5,900. He's $800 cheaper than he is on DK. He's 23% owned. I think that's warranted. We see Hartenstein get to 15% on FanDuel. I'm going to dodge that one pretty easily. That you need a very specific game for that to happen. I think the Knicks look pretty good because I think this spot is great. 6% owned $7,900 Julius Randle on FanDuel. It's just another spot where I'd rather have like 3x the field of that number because he's got power forward center eligibility and he faces the Hornets.
Yeah, I wish I was getting to more of this team. Hopefully I do as the day goes on. Obviously 10 games, so there's a lot of spots to get to, but I'm not really getting there, but I like the spot. Like 8,200 for Julius Randle against the Hornets on DraftKings. He is only power forward eligible, but still, getting 4% ownership. I think he's going a little bit under owned. Jalen Brunson at 6,600, getting half the ownership of Dennis Smith Jr. for $600 more. That looks very reasonable to me.
Yep.
Not getting it, but wouldn't be mad if I did. The guy that I'm actually getting the most of is Quickly at 4,300, getting 4.5% ownership. Minutes are volatile there, but I do like guys like him where if he's playing well, he can just get more minutes, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy type thing. So I do think he's a high upside value play. Obviously not going crazy with the overall exposure to him.
Yeah. I like the Brunson shout on DK. Like I did get 2x that 9% number. That's exactly how I want to play the slate. Take a little bit of that Dennis Smith Jr. ownership away, turn it into Jalen Brunson. I feel like you're getting a better lineup construction there. Most exposed guy that I have, though, on FanDuel is 16% Randall, and I absolutely love that play against Charlotte. Weird Knicks team. Very easy team to project, at least for the Knicks.
Like, yeah, that is true. Toronto-esque.
Yes. Speaking of Toronto-esque, a very uninteresting game here. Philly at Toronto. Sixers are 1-point dogs at Toronto. Standard issue Philly lineup, other than DeAnthony Melton has a Q tag, as does Scotty Barnes on the opposite side. No ownership coming in here, other than a little bit to Embiid on FanDuel at 12%. Harden at 9,600. That price tag feels pretty incorrect given what he's done so far, but I don't like the idea of getting too much of anything from this Philly side. Lowest total on the slate. Toronto defense, obviously, very, very switchable, which is pretty tough for Philadelphia. It's just, this is a really bad fantasy environment.
Yeah, I'm not getting to much of anything here. Maxey, my highest owned guy on DraftKings right now at 8%. Harden behind him at 7%. There's obviously upside here, but there's just no shortage of upside on this slate, getting to like 1% Embiid. But, we already kind of talked about it with Jokic, even though we haven't gotten there yet. If I'm not getting to Jokic, I'm going to have trouble getting to Embiid as well, especially when it comes from like I'm not having trouble getting to Jokic because he's too popular or something. I'm just having trouble getting him in the lineups. So it's going to be tough to get Embiid in the lineups as well. Harden, sure, but it's hard for me to put him ahead of Giannis. It's hard for me to put him ahead of LeBron. So just not getting into a ton of lineups there. The opportunity cost is relatively high at the guard positions as well. So yeah, it's a difficult team for me to get to.
I mean, just right here, 98, 97, 96, 95, 94, 93. Murray, Young, Harden, Mitchell, Lillard, Irving. There's not a ton of separation in that group over all of those guys.
And I'm basically just not even getting the price range.
Yeah, neither am I. No more than 7% of any one of those guys on DraftKings.
I'm double checking now, but I think I'm in the same boat. 7% to Harden. Levine wasn't in there, right?
No.
Yeah, 7% to Harden's my highest.
That's just all guards that project very, very similarly for today. If you think you know which one is the guy in that range, you aren't right. Like,
yeah, you're overestimating your ability to predict things. And the other issue, like, the reason that I'm not getting a lot of exposure overall, because a lot of times when you get a group like that, I would like to just be saying, they're all 5% owned. I'm just going to get 8 to 10% of all of them and be in a good spot when the one or two of them that are going to go nuts do. But the other issue today is not only do you have the pay up guys in Giannis, LeBron, if you want Jokic, that you can get to, but you also have Trey Jones playing without Devin Vassell, taking, a value guard spot. You have Dennis Smith Jr. if you're going that route. You have Kevin Porter Jr., who I think looks good. Josh Richardson has guard eligibility. So a lot of the value is at that position as well. And then the top end guys are, easy enough to get to that you're typically just going to get there instead.
You did. I said it. I don't know if you heard me, but like Kendrick Nunn filling in for Russell Westbrook at 3,500.
Kendrick Nunn, Patrick Beverly, yeah.
So I don't have anything really to talk about for Philly. Obviously, like in these sorts of situations, and I think we say it a lot, if you've got a steady, properly priced 32 plus minute a game starter, that person is always viable to be in lineups that you create. We just might not be talking about it as much as you would think that we should. But if you get a lineup with Harden, with Maxey, with Embiid, even with Tobias Harris at 6K, which isn't all that crazy, it's all fine. But you just got to understand that these are 4 to 6% frequency plays. It's just not all that interesting.
Yeah, it's just you have to keep in mind, and it's difficult talking about it. It's difficult, when you're watching a show. If you're going game by game, you have to keep in mind that you're trying to talk about who the best plays from a game are, but then also put it in the context of the entire slate. While James Harden is fine or Joel Embiid is fine, it would be just flat lying or a disservice to act like they are as good as the best plays on the slate, because they're not. They're good, but it's a 10-game slate. There's going to be a lot of guys that are good. Guys like this just sort of show up where, in a lineup where I need a low-owned guard, James Harden fits really well. Or if I need a low-owned center, Embiid fits really well. But in most lineups, I'm just going to be building around other spots.
Marco said, I think they would start Bev with none coming off the bench. They already start Bev. They need to start someone in Russell Westbrook's place, which I would expect to be none. It doesn't have to be none. It could be Reeves or Ryan or whatever other nonsense they want to do. But someone needs to replace Russell Westbrook.
And either way, none should get minutes off the bench.
Yeah, but either way, Beverly's already in that lineup.
Yeah, and so is Walker.
Yeah. On the Toronto side, assuming Scotty Barnes plays, this is the same sort of situation you normally see. Pascal Siakam's getting a little bit of love as just a center, but 8,800, that's fine. If you get to Trent, Anunoby, Siakam, Barnes, Fred VanVleet, cool. I probably like Anunoby at 6K the most of anybody on the DraftKings side. I'm not really getting to anything in this game, though. I have no real priorities.
Neither do I, and I'm actually concerned with how little Siakam I'm getting right now.
Center only on a 10
yeah,
gamer?
But yeah, I'll say at the same time, 13% ownership, center only, 8,800. I guess it's one of those where
none.
I have 1%. I don't feel good about it, but also I think I'm doing it right. So hopefully we don't get the Pascal Siakam 70-point game. But this is another team where they're just assuming Barnes plays. They are pretty much healthy. There's a bunch of guys that have the ability to do well, but none of them project as particularly likely to do well given their salaries. So they just sort of end up being secondary plays where I'm not getting to much of it. Scotty Barnes is the exception. I'm getting like 18% right now. He has point guard and small forward eligibility on DraftKings. We also have him projected for like 5% ownership. I had him being optimal around 9% of the time. So he is getting pulled up a bit. I am getting there. But outside of Scotty Barnes, I am not really getting to the Raptors. 9% OG.
By the way, like, you don't get to Siakam at 8,800. However you want to say these guys are projected. Karl Anthony Towns is $200 more expensive and 3% owned. Like, that's just a really easy way to not get as much Siakam. You go to Towns.
Well, yeah, and like, so looking at my center exposures,
AD
and obviously
too,
some of these are power forwards as well. But Giannis, Kelly Olynyk, who I'm sure is cheaper by a lot than Siakam. Evan Mobley, who I know is cheaper than Siakam. Kevin Love is a lot cheaper. Jakob Poeltl's cheaper. Bam, Nurkic, Claxton. Like, now we're getting down into like 5% owned guys. It's just the way that I'm playing that position is basically either going up to Giannis or paying down, or at least paying down relative to Siakam.
Like Gobert, $100 cheaper, unowned against the Spurs today. Like, it's really easy to see how you don't get a 13% Pascal Siakam when there's 5 other centers just around him that are equals to him. It's really weird slate. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about Prize Picks, presenting sponsor of this show. We might have to pick up the pace a little bit. There are some dead spots as we move forward a little bit. If you click the link in the description, head on over to Prize Picks, make a deposit. They'll match that deposit up to $100. You don't need an optimizer here or anything like that. You're picking player props, over-unders. Put together 5, you'll net up to 10x your entry fee. Can't ask for much more. That's going to be PGA props, soccer props, MMA props, boxing, F1, women's European basketball. A lot of those names seem like teams that these girls should not be going to play at any longer, but whatever, not my job. We don't have any fantasy point props here for the NBA side, so I'm going to go to straight points props. Let's start with the rookie, Paolo Banchero, over under 19.5.
Hang on a sec.
I've got it way over, but I do think that I might have Paolo Banchero projected too high.
19.5 actual points?
Yes. So I've got 22.5 right now.
Yeah, we have it at 19.6.
Okay. Team Paolo. Team Paolo. We'll go to Karis LeVert, since I think he's an interesting play today. 14.5 points.
We have 14.9, so slight over, I guess.
Yeah. I got him at 15.1, so slight over, I guess. And then let's do one more, a bigger number. Trae Young, 25.5.
Over 27.9.
I'm at 29.4.
Yeah.
Oh, give me all the Trae Young for today on Prize Picks. That's the one, guys. Go take Trae Young on Prize Picks. That's the winner right there. And seriously, just go sign up. $100 in a match deposit bonus. Start it off at Prize Picks. Pacers, Bulls. This one's probably going to be tricky until later today. We do not yet know the status of Miles Turner. He is questionable as of right now. If he comes back in, there is a really interesting trickle down that we don't know. The only ownership that's coming in is 8% to Halliburton on DK and 15% to Miles Turner, where he is 6K on FanDuel. If Turner plays, I have a little bit of interest, but nothing crazy. Ownership probably takes me out of it. If you want to get to like $5,700 Mathurin on FanDuel, cool. I will probably play a little bit more Jalen Smith, which means he will leave the rotation now that Turner's back. I think Indiana's really tough to play today.
Yeah, so do I. Highest owned guy I have right now is Jalen Smith at 10%. He should be pretty much unaffected, I think. They gave up on him playing center after basically that first game or game and a half. Turner's not a great rebounder anyway, so I think Jalen Smith should be okay. Happy getting to 10% of him. 5% of Halliburton, fine. Like, the guy is great. Getting like 4% Turner. Just another team where there's no real priorities. It's just guys that are mixing into lineups here and there. Jalen Smith being the one I'm getting to the most.
I got to 9% Mathurin. That's the most I got of anybody. He's unowned on FanDuel, and I'm okay with that. That dude likes to shoot. But that's not 9% is not a priority. Yeah, I'm happy about it. I was not a fan of him coming into the league, but he has looked a little bit better than I was expecting.
A little bit.
3 games for a team where he's allowed to do whatever he wants.
I know, but I was like, I understand that what he's doing isn't sustainable, but if we're going by what he has looked like so far, he's looked a lot better than you were expecting.
Absolutely. No doubt about that. On the Bulls side, not much here to say. Still no Lonzo. Everybody else available. We've got DeMar DeRozan, 10% owned on DraftKings. Price came down to 8,900. Slightly more owned on FanDuel, where he's 30% owned, 8,500, shooting guard, small forward. Is he a good point per dollar play? Yes, he is, for sure. I don't know if I need 30% of DeMar in this spot, but it is a really good opportunity against Indiana. If Turner's back or not kind of matters for me. I just don't need chalk DeRozan. We've got $7,300 Zach LaVine going on FanDuel, which is pretty interesting to me as well. I'm really not getting to much of this team, though.
Yeah, pretty crazy FanDuel price tag on LaVine. Just saw Drop Roses mentioning in chat, so glad that you two were on the same page. But I think that, LaVine's the guy I'm getting to the most on DraftKings. He did play 32 minutes last game. Looked like he could have played more. They said he wasn't on a minutes limit. They've said that for both of his games. I don't totally buy it, but 32 and a half minutes in a non-competitive game, left 3 minutes on the table. That was pretty close to a Zach LaVine rotation that you would expect, getting 35, 36 minutes. I don't think he's far off. So at 7,700 on DraftKings in a good spot. Also, only getting 4% ownership right now. That is going to push him up for me. I do think he's going under-owned, and he is just at a cheaper price point than those other guards in that price range that we've talked about. Mitchell, Young, Murray, obviously they're better than LaVine, but you're getting like a $2,000 discount getting to LaVine. So I do like getting there. Not getting as much DeRozan. He's 8,900, small forward, power forward. He looks fine. Does take a bit of a usage hit with LaVine back, but still a good matchup. Basically, right now on DraftKings, I sort of just flipped the DeRozan and LaVine ownership. We have DeRozan projected for 11% ownership, LaVine for 4%. I have 4% DeRozan, 14% LaVine. Perfectly happy playing it like that.
I have the exact same scenario.
Yeah, 7,900 for Vooch looks fine. I personally didn't get too much of him at all, but again, that's just because I'm getting Pirtle and Bam and Nurkic. If you want to tell me and Mobley, if you tell me you're getting to Vooch instead, that is absolutely fine. He looks good. What
do you think of that ownership on DeRozan on FanDuel? Because that's really the talking point for this game. 30%, 8,500, shooting guard, small forward. He's a really good point per dollar play at 8,500. I can't disagree with that. He's a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy playing 36 minutes, but 30% on this slate just feels aggressive.
It kind of, I think, just depends on what you're doing with other chalk plays. Like,
yeah,
it's, and I know you're not doing this, but we talk about it a lot. You can't just always, you can't look at somebody's ownership in a vacuum. Like, if you think that DeRozan is going less over-owned at 30% than like 4 other popular guys on the slate, you should be playing a lot of DeRozan. If you like other chalk plays more, then you shouldn't. So, it does kind of depend there. I do think 30% is probably a little bit high, just given that there's plenty of other options in that price range that give you a similar range of outcomes, but still looks like a good value. So it really just comes down to, do your lineups look better with other chalk pieces and then losing some DeRozan, or vice versa?
He's the highest owned guy on FanDuel right now.
That seems crazy just for an $8,500 guy.
I know. That's like, it's not like his price tag. Like, I think it's probably close to the wrong price tag for him. But with LaVine there, it's like he's just not going to have the ball in the same sort of way. for him to get to 30, and like even Halliburton in the same game is $100 more expensive and 1/6 the ownership. I'll just take my chances on Halliburton, and I'm not even getting a Halliburton. But like, just Trae Young is around, Kyrie is around. You drop down, you go to like someone like Jimmy Butler at half of the ownership. I just don't know. Like, I'm getting to DeRozan, but not to 30. Anyway, we'll go to the San Antonio Spurs.
I have a question for you because I saw it mentioned in chat, and how does Ayo Dosunmu score fantasy points?
I have no idea.
Like, he always does, and I have no idea how. The guy's like a mid-teens usage guy. He is 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth on the team this year in potential assists per game behind DeRozan, Levine, Dragic, and Caruso. And somehow the guy just always ends up with fantasy points.
I don't get it.
Like, I never play him. I'm not
0.75 guy. He's efficient. I got his true shooting at 64%. Maybe it's just when he does shoot, it goes in.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's always frustrating because like he somehow always gets there, but there's just like nothing that he does particularly well from a fantasy standpoint.
The San Antonio Spurs running it back against Minnesota, embarrassed them 2 nights ago. They're 9-point dogs at the Wolves today, 231 total. No Devin Vassell for San Antonio. That's going to open things up a bit. Keldon Johnson, 20% owned. Jakob Poeltl, 20% owned. Trey Jones, 20% owned. Josh Richardson, the guy that's likely to get the biggest benefit here, 37% owned on DraftKings. Josh Primo getting some love. Not as much coming into the FanDuel side. They're not as advantageously priced, but if you're looking for like good mid-tier options, the Spurs are your team.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one for me to talk about because they're my highest owned team, and I'm also even or under the field on almost every player, I think. Just because they are all getting so much ownership. Josh Richardson coming in at 37%. He's my highest owned guy at like 39%. Poeltl's coming in at 21. I have like 11. I mentioned that before. I think he looks good at 6,400, but that's also just a lot of ownership coming into a center when there's a lot of comparable guys. Keldon Johnson, 6,800, coming in at 24%. I have like 20. He's just going to look good. So far this year, I think he's been around in fantasy. Yeah, 1.14 DraftKings points per minute, 26.4% usage rate. But then you're also taking out Devin Vassell's 24.5% usage rate. Josh Richardson shouldn't have a usage rate that high. No. Primo, if he replaces him, shouldn't have a usage rate that high. So you should get even more for Keldon Johnson, but the ownership also is already there. Trey Jones at 22%. I am actually getting more of him than the field right now, getting around 30% of him. He's someone that I've actually been underweight on a lot this season, just because I've been playing so much Vassell and then a little bit less Jones. But he's at 1 fantasy point per minute. You could certainly see a bit of an uptick for him without Vassell as well. I think he looks really good at 5,500. Josh Primo at 4K, I'm getting like 12 to 15%. So there's just a lot of guys here that look really, really good. The ownership, I think, is already there. So it's not like a team that I expect to be jamming, 80% of anybody, at least right now. But yeah, I do think they look like the best team to get to on the slate.
We are on the same page there. FanDuel's a little bit different. Only Keldon Johnson and Jakob Poeltl are in double digits. Trey Jones is $6,300, $800 more expensive than DraftKings. Josh Richardson, $700 more expensive on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings. They look like good plays, but not the great plays that they look like on DraftKings. Josh Richardson seems like the no-brainer, right? Just 3,900, shooting guard, small forward, guard forward, utility. Pretty easy to just lock him into a cash lineup.
Josh Richardson?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Anything else here?
Nope.
Minnesota, I got a ton of them the last time out, and I felt pretty good about it. It's going to happen again tonight because they're unowned. 6% owned on anyone on DK is the highest you get for the Minnesota guys. Anthony Edwards is at 19% on FanDuel. That is kind of chalky, but D'Angelo Russell, unowned. He's 1.09 fantasy points per minute, playing 34 minutes for this team. 1% owned at 7,300. I want a ton of D'Angelo Russell given that heading into a GPP. I like Towns. I like Gobert. I'll take a little bit of McDaniels. I like the Minnesota side because they should smack San Antonio.
Should have last time also.
Yeah, well, that's not how we do this.
No. Yeah, there's a lot of upside here. It's just, at least from the DraftKings standpoint, not a lot of value. Anthony Edwards at 8K, shooting guard, small forward, looks good, but also probably priced about where he should be. He's averaged 1 DraftKings point per minute this year, 28% usage rate, 15% assist percentage, 11% rebounding percentage. He is another one that I think you see that point per minute production come up, kind of like we were talking about with Cade Cunningham. He's at a fantasy point per minute on 49.4% true shooting. That's just going to come up. Karl Anthony Towns and D'Angelo Russell both at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. We've seen D'Angelo Russell lead the team in assist percentage. I'd mentioned that before game 1 that you saw a bump for him without Patrick Beverley last year. This year he's at 27.5%. But game 1, you really saw Edwards be the guy. Since then, you've seen Russell kind of go back to what you expected him to be. So I'm with you as far as him looking like a good low-owned option. Just also 7,400 on DraftKings, so kind of tough to get to. Good team, a lot of good players, good spot, good matchup, but I'm also just not really getting to it.
Yeah, it's more of a FanDuel thing for me. I don't have as much on the DraftKings side as I do on the FanDuel side.
My highest owned guy on DraftKings is Jalen Noel, which I really don't feel good about.
He was the only guy that could get anything done in the last one when I was watching against the Spurs, so you should feel good if you can get that part back.
Yeah, and I mean, I only have him in like 5%. It's just, he's 4,600. He fits in the lineup here or there. But yeah, I'd love to get to more of these guys. It's just difficult.
All righty. We'll keep going here. Houston, Utah. This should be a fun game to try to attack. On the Houston side, we've got no Alperen Şengün, no Bruno Fernando. Jayshawn Tate, questionable, could be coming back here. Don't think this is going to really matter too much for most of these main guys. I also don't know, have a clue how many minutes they're going to throw at Tate in his first game back. I gave him like somewhere in the low 20s, but I think you're still getting like mid to high or mid 30s of Porter, of Smith, of Green, potentially of Martin, and of Eric Gordon. All these guys are kind of owned in the teens. I think they all look pretty good. $4,200 Kenyon Martin is a guy that I'm looking at quite a bit on FanDuel, just because of that price tag. If he's still playing 30 minutes, we'll see. I do have him in for that right now. I'll happily just take any one of these pieces from Houston in this matchup against Utah.
Yeah, I agree. I'm getting over the field on actually a couple of pieces here. I mentioned it earlier, but Kevin Porter Jr. right now, my second highest owned point guard on DraftKings at 22%. I'm getting the Jalen Green around 15%, which is slightly over the field as well. These are just two guys, Porter at 7,600, Green at 6,600 that have really high ceilings here against Utah. They're just not getting as much ownership as some other spots. Green, I think, is another example where he's $600 more than Dennis Smith Jr., but getting half the ownership. I think they should just be closer in ownership. Kevin Porter Jr., I think, looks really good. Jabari Smith, 16%, certainly can get back there. I've been impressed with him so far this year. Not getting to a lot today, it doesn't look like, but I think he looks fine. Might be a naming error issue, though, so not entirely sure on Jabari Smith. But either way, happy to get there if I can. Do need to see Jayshawn Tate if he's starting, what that starting lineup looks like. Right now, we only have KJ Martin getting 4% ownership at 4,500. If he is starting and he's 4% owned, he's kind of interesting. But I don't know if he would keep that starting spot or not.
I have him in for 30 minutes right now, which does make him look interesting, but I don't have a great feel for it either. I don't know if Jayshawn Tate is long for Houston this season either, so we'll see if he's actually going to be there after the deadline.
Didn't they extend him?
He wants out.
Oh, okay.
Y'all don't think Jayshawn Tate is going to have a decent amount of usage on his first game back? I mean, he would have to become a different Jayshawn Tate for that.
Yeah, and that last part certainly doesn't matter.
Yeah. But
no, I mean, think about this team. Where's the usage coming from? Is Kevin Porter Jr. giving it to him? Is Jalen Green giving it up? Is Jabari Smith giving it up? Like, Jayshawn Tate becomes a usage guy when everybody is out. Otherwise, like, he's not somebody that is supposed to be getting usage there.
No, he's like the evolutionary Jay Crowder.
Right.
We wouldn't be like, yo, Jay Crowder, you're gonna be getting him up tonight.
Yeah, but then you get the one game a year where everybody's out and Jay Crowder's running point.
Yeah. On the Jazz side, pretty normal rotations and everything. Should expect everybody to be here. Markkanen, 6,500 on DraftKings, 20% owned. To me, that's very warranted. Kelly Olynyk, 5,600 on DK, 5,300 on FanDuel. Again, one of the best plays you're going to find in this matchup against Houston, missing their first two centers. I mean, all of this looks good for Kelly O. I'll take some Conley. I'll take a couple bites at the apple of Jordan Clarkson. Jared Vanderbilt for 5,100 looks good, getting some ownership. Hard to not like the Utah side of this game when you get to face Houston.
Agreed. And I just solved the Jabari Smith issue. It was a naming issue. So everything I've said on this show has been incorrect as far as my exposures go because I didn't have any Jabari Smith, but should be, more or less correct still. As far as the Utah side goes, they look very good. Getting to a lot of Kelly Olynyk. He's one of my highest owned guys right now. He is 5,600 with power forward center eligibility, getting 17% ownership. I'm basically double that number. Marketing at 6,500 looks fine. Salary did drop, I think, like $100 or something, or from last slate, but I'm getting around 18% there. Vanderbilt at 5,100, still a decent option. Didn't get to a lot of him last slate, not getting to a lot of him this slate. Hopefully it doesn't burn me as bad as it did. It's just that he's a really, really good rebounder. He certainly gives you a nice ceiling, a solid projection, but he's also getting 20% ownership. So I just don't have as much of him. Getting a little bit over the field on $6,200 Conley. I think another reasonable pivot away from Dennis Smith Jr. at $200 more. But Kelly Olynyk, the clear priority for me here, getting to like 33% of him right now.
All righty. We've got 2 games to go here. Probably going to need to pick up the pace. We've got like 5 minutes to do it. Lakers are 6.5-point dogs in Denver, 227 total. Russell Westbrook not going to be here for this one. He is doubtful with that hamstring injury. Pat Bev is 25% owned on DraftKings and 24% on FanDuel. Looks solid to me. LeBron, 18% owned. AD not really pulling all that much love on DK. Similar story on FanDuel. Lonnie Walker looks like a really interesting value at 4,700 and 5,200 with no rust. Just should be more shots out there. Kendrick Nunn, though, 35. I mean, this won't be correct. 35% or $3,500 for Nunn on DK, 39 on FanDuel, unowned basically. I mean, if Kendrick Nunn gets named the starter for the Lakers today, he's going to be a lot more than 8% owned. I don't know if that happens before lock. I like all of the Lakers.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think I have Nunn projected as highly as you do, and he's still showing up in some lineups for me just because he should still get opportunities even if he comes off the bench.
What do you have him projected for?
18 DraftKings points.
I got him at 26 minutes, 20.8 DK points.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit lower.
Yeah. Are you getting a different, like, are you getting Reeves or Troy Brown or something instead? Like, it's got to be someone.
I mean, I'm getting LeBron the most.
Sure.
Getting Beverly second most, Nunn third most. Like, I'm getting 13% Nunn. I just don't have him projected as high as you do.
Interesting.
Getting 5% Reeves, 4% Walker. Wouldn't mind getting more Walker.
Yeah, I've got like 26% Walker, 20% Bev, 45% Nunn because of this, like jamming in that value. I really like the Lakers today with no Russ. 1% owned AD, like that's another spot where you can get away from Pascal Siakam at 8,800 to go to AD. It all looks good. AD's been great, by the way. 1.4 FanDuel points per minute. I like whoever's starting for the Lakers. 4 normal ones and whoever ends up filling in.
Sort of. Like, you can only like Austin Reeves so much.
I mean, if you knew he was playing 30 minutes, I mean, yes, but like, and this is all ownership dependent.
Yeah. We're up to 18% Jabari Smith now, so that's good.
Okay. I love Nikola Jokic today, 10-9 on DraftKings, 11K on FanDuel. He's not pulling all that much ownership in relationship to Giannis. I have him projected very well for today's game and for the pace up spot against the Lakers. Happy to get to some MPJ too at 5,900 and 6,100. Quick thoughts on the Denver Nuggets.
Just not getting to much of them. I think that it's a good spot. It's just a difficult team to get to. I've already kind of touched on why I think it's difficult for me to get to Jokic. There's just good mid-range centers, and then I'm prioritizing Giannis over him currently. But obviously not going to talk anybody off of Jokic. He's the second best point per minute guy on the slate. Going back to the start of the 2020 season, 1.55 DraftKings points per minute with Jamal Murray, 1.7 without him. So you're still talking about a really, really productive option. Michael Porter Jr. at 5,900 gives you some upside, also dealing with a back injury. So that's always a little concerning when you're talking about Michael Porter because that's been a thing. But assuming he's good to go, like, I'm just going to assume, like, if he's playing, I assume he's good to go. And he's going to look like a pretty high upside option. But nothing really standing out to me as far as being able to get to them on DraftKings.
Okay. Yeah, I just, the pace up spot for me for Denver is really what's pushing everybody a bit higher. So I am getting to Porter. I'm getting to Jamal Murray. I'm getting a bit of Bruce Brown, actually, a little Aaron Gordon on FanDuel. Getting to a lot of Denver, getting to a lot of that game in general. Getting a lot less of this one. Miami at Portland, 1-point dogs, 221 total. Tyler Hero is 18% owned on DraftKings. Nobody else is in double digits. There's better pricing on the FanDuel side, but I'm going to assume that you're not getting a ton of the Miami Heat.
I'm not getting a ton of the Miami Heat. I think Hero is. I'm getting like 18% Tyler Hero on DraftKings. Getting like 17% Caleb Martin. 10% Lowry. 9% Bam. So I actually am getting a decent amount of the Heat.
Okay. I got 6% Bam, and that's about it. I'm getting to Bam and Lowry and Butler on FanDuel, where their prices are all way better. But and then I'm not getting Hero, where his price is worse. I just don't have much to say about Miami. Like you know the guys that you can play. Caleb Martin back now after his suspension as well, so we know the rotation.
I think it's just decent pricing here, and then also a pretty good spot. 4,400 for Caleb Martin at forward, at small forward, a position where I'm probably going to be paying down a good amount. Tyler Hero, point guard and shooting guard, which stands out a little bit given how so many guys right now on DraftKings are just point guard. Having both of those actually is pretty useful for Hero, so getting around the field there. 7,200 on Bam is still just a pretty cheap price tag, even though he has been pretty disappointing so far. 4% ownership coming into Kyle Lowry. I don't mind just gambling on him and hoping for the best.
And then on the Portland side, we're waiting on news of Justice Winslow. Didn't play in the last one, still questionable here. Josh Hart, the only guy in double digits on DK. Highest owned guy is Josh Hart on FanDuel at 7%. I'm getting to Simons, I'm getting to Hart, but no real priorities coming from Portland for me.
I'm getting to Portland a lot too, which I'm really not happy about because the matchup sucks and I don't really trust this team, but still getting to a lot of Josh Hart. He's not been fun to roster this year, but he's still playing huge minutes for this team. He has MPE, which is really nice. Shooting guard, small forward on DraftKings, so about as good as it gets. Getting 13% ownership, projected ownership there. I'm getting him in like twice that. I have like 29% right now on DraftKings. Wouldn't be mad if that comes down a little bit, but I also understand why it's happening. Getting to some Anthony Simons as well. He's projected for 5 to 6% ownership. I have like 16% on DraftKings. So those are the two that I'm really getting to a healthy amount. Getting to a little bit of Nurk also, which I'm fine with. He's projected for 8% ownership. I'm around the field there, but it's Josh Hart and Anthony Simons as guys that I expect to be overweight on right now.
Anything else you want to add for this slate?
No, seems like a really wide open tournament slate. In that, now that I updated my exposures, I went from my highest owned guy being Richardson at 39%. Now it's Richardson at 35%. So it's just right now really flat exposures across the board for me.
Yeah. Going to be a tough one tonight. Adam will break it all down on the deeper dive later. I will be back for Live Before Lock. Adam will have Tony Plays videos and injury reports coming out quite a bit later today. Thank you to PrizePicks for being the sponsor of this one. NFL Strategy Show Ownership Edition coming up next. Good luck, everybody. We'll talk to you later.